Well, good morning, Langsburg community. Good morning, First Congregational Church of Langsburg. And hey, check it out. That's my name. Well, my thing's getting all crazy on me. That's my name right there. I'm on the sign, y'all. I am on the sign. Welcome to our online service. Today's gonna be a bit different because, well, one, I'm walking out here in the streets and there are some cars going by. That was a Tesla. I saw a Tesla. You see that? I want a Tesla. So we are kind of looking at how do we respond with this online service. What's it going to become? So today's going to be a little bit more streamlined. It's just me teaching basically. Because we're trying to figure out what we're going to do for the summer months. So we're going to do a little bit more streamlined today. You're still going to get the entirety of the message, but we are just going to do some explorations here, so things are going to look a little different. Hey, how do you like our steeple? Isn't that, hold on, there we go. Isn't that gorgeous? That is, yes. Bells are in it and it sounds great. So we invite you just to take a moment of quiet and prepare your heart. There's the bells to meet with God. And we'll see you on the other side as we explore 1 John chapter 5, last part of What is Love. Those bells are good. So, not too long ago, my family and I went to a museum, and in this museum was a recreation of King Tut's tomb. It was pretty cool. Like, they had 3D replicas, like 3D printed replicas of the actual artifacts from King Tut's tomb, and we got to explore all of the artifacts and everything in this recreation museum, and it was like stepping back in time so many thousands of years, and it was just so fascinating. Now the thing that stuck out to me the most, not just being in contact with all of this ancient artifacts, but the thing that really stuck out to me the most was the mummification process. It's kind of gross when you think about it. This is how they like mummified, their tuts, their kings and whatever. Well, they mummified them by, they had to remove the vital organs because they go bad, and that's bad for the mummification preserving process. So they would take out all the internal organs of the body, wrap the body up in like this cloth strips and everything. Then they would wrap up all the internal organs and put them in special jars. And then they would place the internal organs next to the body in the tomb, because obviously in the afterlife, you're gonna need your organs. So you're gonna go and get them out of the jars, I guess, I don't know. But they would pull these organs out of the jars and then carry on in the afterlife. There'd also be, riches and other items that you'd need, like honey and stuff like that, for the journey of the afterlife afterwards. One of the interesting things, they valued all of the internal organs, like the stomach and the kidney and the liver and all that kind of stuff. They treated it with like this special prominence, and then they put that stuff in special jars. But you know what they didn't keep? This is really interesting, really interesting. They didn't keep the brain. So they couldn't leave the brain in the skull, because then it would, make the mummification process go south and get sour, and yeah, that's gross. But they would just like stick a stick into your nose. You're dead, of course, so you don't know this is happening. And they would liquefy the brain and just kind of pull it out and toss it away, because who needs that skull sponge anyways? What good is that thing for? So they didn't really value the brain, but they valued these internal vital organs. And this kind of points to a shift in human understanding of where the seat of consciousness has been. When you think about like what makes you, you, and this is like shifted over time. The seat of consciousness to the Egyptians was in your torso, in your bowels, in your inner being down there. You know, you get like a gut feeling about something, and then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I got to do this. That's a gut feeling. They thought that was the seat of your will. So your soul lived in your guts. So if you look into the Old Testament, and sometimes they would translate, you know, to believe in your heart. The word heart is actually the word for bowels. So it's like, it's not a very romantic way to say, you know, you believe something so strongly, you believe it in your intestines. But they changed it to heart in English translations just to make it sound prettier, I guess. I don't know. So to believe in your bowels, that was the seat of your conscience. And then somewhere around New Testament Greek times, it shifted and moved upward. So the seat of consciousness moved from bowels and intestinal things. It moved up to your actual heart. So your cardia is the Greek word for heart. It moved to the heart in the chest area because you would, you know, feel impassioned and strong, and that's the seat of vitality. You know, you take a deep breath, and that's how you live and move in this world. So they thought that the seat of consciousness was in your heart. And that was very recent. That lasted a long time into modern day. When your heart stopped, you were officially believed to be dead. So when your heart stopped, you were dead. So they thought the seat of your soul or consciousness was in your heart, because when your heart stopped, you were medically dead. But that changed because you remember Flatliners? They would stop their heart and visit the afterlife and come back. That's a weird movie. But what changed was now the seat of consciousness has gone up to your brain. The thing that the mummies had been discarded of, so they're not able to think in the afterlife, I guess. I don't know. The thing that they thought was least important is now what we have elevated to the seat of consciousness, that we think once your brain waves stop, your brain activity ceases, then you are officially expired and you've ceased consciousness, even if your heart's still going, because they can keep you breathing and your heart pumping. But if you don't have brain activity, then you're officially a goner, I guess. So this idea, this thought got me thinking, when we get into this passage of 1 John and it says to believe in your heart, like, what does that mean? What is it talking about? It's a very Christianized term, you know, like as a teenager, I asked Jesus into my heart. That was what I did a couple of times, because I screwed it up a couple of times. That's how I thought about things. I was like, oh, it must not have worked the first time, so I got to do it again. But you ask Jesus into your heart, and what does that mean? Would the Hebrews say you ask Jesus into your guts, or the Egyptians? And now, today, since the seat of consciousness has moved from heart to brain, now do we ask Jesus into our brain? Do you believe in your brain? Do you believe in your heart? Do you believe in your guts? What is the seat of human consciousness, to where if you ask, you know, if you believe something deep down, you believe it in your heart, what does that mean, you know, practically? How does that look like? What does that look like? I think what John is trying to get at here is, what does it mean to authentically believe something with conviction? And then he ties the common understanding of heart to it. Because there's three ways of knowing something. I mean, if we're honest where we've come in our day and age, there's three ways that we can know something. We can know something with our intellect, we can know something with our emotion, and we can know something with our gut or instinct. So these three seats of consciousness has kind of shifted over time, but they tend to still last today. There's three ways of knowing something. And there's even this personality tool that's kind of a hot deal right now called the Enneagram, and they divide personalities up into three ways of kind of knowing and operating in the world. There's the people who operate with their head or intellect, there's the people who operate with their heart or their emotion, and then there's the people who operate out of their gut instinct and just kind of like that I got a feeling about this, we're gonna go. But not an emotion feeling, more like an instinctual feeling. So which one's more important? The Enneagram will tell us that it's, it depends on who you are. Some people operate more intellectually, some people operate more emotionally, and some people operate more instinctually. And there's 3 different ways of knowing. So which one is 1 John telling us that knowing emotionally is more important than intellectually? That's kind of a craze right now where, information does not equal transformation is kind of one of those terms that we're hearing in today's day, which is true. You can know something without knowing it, read all about it, but are you going to go ski downhill just because you read all the skiing books? There's a different way of knowing how to ski than just reading the books about skiing. So there's something to that, but there's also still, not to discount, the intellectual way of knowing things. So what is 1 John 5 trying to express to us? I think 1 John 5 is telling us this is what it means to know something at a very deep and convicting way, a certain way, a knowing way, a convicting way, and it's something that's deeper than all 3 ways of knowing, either head or heart or instinct. There's a deeper way of knowing that John is trying to put his fingerprint on, and we're going to explore that in the next section. All right, so what if we have the emphasis on the wrong syllable? See what I did there? Emphasis on the wrong syllable, and then I actually did it. The emphasis on the wrong syllable. What if we're reading this passage with that emphasis in the wrong place? We're emphasizing the word heart, to believe in your heart, that you need to believe in your heart. What if the emphasis shouldn't be on the word heart at all? That's just John's way of having an understanding of a deeper conviction than emotion, than intellect, than instinct. What if the key phrase here is not heart, but your? What if the key phrase here is this, this, I almost said preposition, but that's a different word. This pronoun for your. What if the way is to know something the way that you know something? To know something the way that your heart understands. So that the emphasis is on the word heart or on the word your instead of on the word heart. See, there is a way of learning and exploring that you prefer. There are different modes of learning that different people prefer. Some prefer the intellect way of learning about things. Some prefer, and there's even different modes of learning in the intellect, whether it's hearing or whether it's reading or seeing or whether it's hands-on activity. Those are 3 different ways of even learning in the intellect. Some people prefer learning in the emotional realm and being attached to, story and the human element of things. And some people prefer to learn in that instinctual realm. So there is a way of exploring and learning that is specific to you that you have. So what if you believe in your heart is not heart, but your way of learning, your way of understanding? Because there's a way of exploring and learning that is yours to prefer, but there's also a way of grasping and understanding what you're exploring that you prefer as well. Are you going to understand it in an intellectual way, emotional way, or instinctual way? And this is what we're trying to get at here, is that it's not the mode of understanding that's so important. Those are just pathways. How you get to a mode of understanding, whether it's emotion, intellect, or instinct, those are just pathways to the actual place of knowing. So we shouldn't have to elevate one of the 3 over another. These are just the trusted and true pathways of learning, exploring, understanding, and grasping certain concepts. So what I think John is trying to get at here is that there is a knowledge of God that is placed into the deepest recesses of your soul. And this is what Thomas Merton refers to as your truth. And in kind of a postmodern age, that scares a lot of religious people to say your truth, because automatically we think, oh, then you can just make up a truth that you want to be true, and that'll be your truth, and you don't have to rely on anything external like any objective truth. It can make 1 + 1 = 3 if you want to, if that's your truth. And that's not what Thomas Merton is trying to get at with your truth. He's saying that there is an understanding, there's a knowledge of God that God placed into the very deepest recesses of your soul. And that is your truth, and you can't make it up. You can't fabricate it. You have to discover it, and God placed it there, so it is both objective and subjective at the same time. It's not something that you get to make up. It's something that is a lifelong discovery of what's already there, of who God has made you to be. And the Christian doctrine that points to this most is the Christian understanding of vocation. Vocation is not your career path. Vocation comes from the Latin word where we get the word voice. This is your specific voice. And when we say somebody has found their voice or their calling, we say that somebody's really tapped into what they're gifted to do in this world. So it's not something you just get to make up. If you're not, a genius at singing, and then all of a sudden you want to be a singer, you could probably learn to sing, but you're probably not going to be, Paul McCartney. You have something else that is your truth that you're supposed to discover. And it's like a co-creation of you and God together, getting to discover who you are and how God has made you. Look at that sun, man. It's bright out here. It's great. I'm walking my dog. So it's not something you just get to make up. It's something that is unique to you, that is your truth that God placed there, that you have to discover with God, in company of God, and in community, and with other people involved in this. So to know God is to come into contact with the presence of God within you, and intellect, and heart and instinct are just the pathways you use to get to that place of knowing and understanding and grasping who God is and who God has made you to be. They're going to be found in the same place. If you ask Jesus into your heart, as the common phrasing says, then that means that somewhere deep inside of you, God has placed the Spirit of God, and that is where the presence of God is. So then to go inward and get to the deep recesses of your soul is to find God. To find you is to find God, and to find God is to find you, because they're now in the same place. And this sanctuary of the soul is deeper than emotion, it's deeper than intellect, it's deeper than instinct. Those are just the pathways we use to get there. So there is two testimonies here in this passage. There's the human testimony and God's testimony. And the word testimony here is not just like somebody was an eyewitness and then they're telling the story of what they saw, even though that's part of it. The word testimony here is actually the Greek word that we get martyr. Martyrios means to witness. So when somebody gives their life to something that they believe in, they are a martyr for the cause. We use that term. That is the same term that's used here for this place. And it's somebody who has such a deep conviction about something they know to be true that they give their lives to it. That's the term for testimony or witness here, is to have such a deep conviction, beyond intellect, beyond emotion, beyond that if you were to violate this conviction, you violate your very soul. So instead you give your body away as sacrifice, because you know this to be true deeper than your body and your very life. And this kind of touches on what Jesus said: if you want to find your life, you have to lose it. If you want to save your life, then you're going to have to give it away. So this is that paradox of finding life or knowledge. It's actually found through the death and resurrection process, which is just the pathway of loving. So you find this kind of life, that you find this kind of conviction, not by defending it or fighting for it, or arguing or debating it and then winning, not by protecting it, or not even by preserving it. You don't find this kind of life that way. You find this life by losing it. or by just discovering what you're willing to die for. You know, you didn't know that you believe something so passionately or strongly until this moment here, where you're faced at the crossroads of decision. And now all of a sudden, you have to make a call, you have to make a decision, and then boom, you give your life for this conviction. That's what it means. It's to kind of, as Martin Luther said, "Here I stand, I can do no other." Conviction is a deep way of knowing something that you cannot violate without damaging your soul. So instead, you give your life or your body over to it. And that's the way of believing that John's talking about here. It's something deeper than just knowing or even feeling, or even just, you know, I got a gut feeling kind of a thing. This is the kind of knowing that Mother Teresa knew, even though she lived 50 years in spiritual darkness, never receiving a consolation from God, feeling far away from God for all 50 years. She stayed faithful to serving the poor, because a violation of that would be a violation of herself. It's like Rosa Parks not giving up her bus seat. She just knew, this is the conviction, here I sit, I can do no other. It's like Martin Luther King, I have a dream. You know, it's Joan of Arc. It's the people that believe something so strongly that they can give their lives over to it with as much authenticity and integrity as they know how. It's just a deep conviction that you give your life over to, and it's always going to be through a pattern of love. It's always going to be through a pattern of self-giving, because it's only through self-giving that you find this kind of life. So I think that's kind of what John is getting on here, and this concludes our passage on our study on the book of 1 John. Well, thank you so much for joining us for our online service. Check out our beautiful maple tree in the parking lot. I love this backdrop. It's so green, and it's like summer is here, and I'm so happy about it. Next week is Pentecost. We have a new, one-off. We're doing Pentecost for, like, I guess it's not a one-off, it's more like two. We're gonna look at the series of Pentecost, and then we have Ordinary Time. That's gonna be happening throughout the summer and fall until we get to Christmas. But we ain't gonna talk about Christmas yet, because we don't want to talk about winter or any of that jazz just now. We're gonna enjoy that greenness. You see that greenness? That's beautiful. So we will see you next week, and we'll see what this online service looks like next week, as we're just doing a little experimentation. So we'll see you then, and thanks for tuning in. Catch you later. Peace.